Hey, you guys can see me. Thank you for the comments letting me know. This has been the most stressful 6 minutes of my life. Oh, my goodness, people. Seriously, I have no idea what just happened here. So I need to basically see in the comments. You can see me. You can see me. It's the Seth Show. Bradley Havens. How's it going? That was one of the most stressful 5 minutes of my adult life, and I work in child protection. Welcome to the Chief of the North Thursday live stream. I am so excited to spend this Thursday night with you, especially now that I've actually figured out how to. That was unbearable. Thank you, Chris Anderson, for telling me. Thank you for the first super chat we've got here. Positive reinforcements from Stevie. I'm not wearing any kind of Raider colors. I am relieved. I'm happy. Life is good. Let's get going and doing this. I am not going to be remotely as professional as Ryan is. I'm not going to be remotely as professional as Dan is because that's just not me. Gooch, I see you too. Good to see you as well. I think we had one more super chat already that I may have actually lost in that short amount of time from the judge asking, should the Chiefs tank for another draft pick, which is I don't even know how to respond to that. No, not yet. That seems just a little bit premature at this point. Look, it has been a rough last couple of weeks. There's really no other way to describe that. This is probably as rough as it's been in the Mahomes era, and there's really not much to say about it. Almost as rough as the fact that when this goes and becomes part of the YouTube video, I think what's going to happen is that first 5 minutes of me being unable to connect and just sitting here staring at the computer, I think that's going to be part of the video overall. So I'm excited for that. No, the Chiefs shouldn't tank. They still have a good roster. We could see the Chiefs come back and win 10 in a row. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. The long and short of it, they're a playoff contender, so you fight for seeding. You know, Gooch, I've actually been told that blue is my color. And so you and my wife both really like it on me. And so here's the thing. I want to talk about a few things tonight. It's going to be a little bit weird, a little bit different because it's just me. I'll try to answer some questions, especially super chats. I'll do the very best I can. We'll see how it goes. It'll be mostly horrifying. But there's a couple things that I want to talk about. One of the articles that I wrote for the Chief of the North newsletter was about the end of an era for the Chiefs, and especially the end of an era for Chiefs fans. And I don't mean that to be melodramatic in that, one loss changes everything. Losing to the Bills, I mean, these things happen. Sometimes you lose bad games. The thing is that hasn't really happened over the course of the last several years with Mahomes at the helm. And what I found out when I was watching the Bills just take the Chiefs apart, just beat them senseless. It was ugly. We all saw it. It was bad. The thing for me was there was this end of an era where I've been expecting things to go well over the course of the last several years, especially since the Super Bowl. I keep waiting for good things to happen. And I've kind of lost that old, because Chiefs, that kind of attitude that things were always going to end badly. And it's one of those weird things to feel coming back where you kind of assume that things are going to come back around and things are going to be okay. And I think I lost that against the Bills. I think we've reached the end of we're assuming because Mahomes, things are suddenly going to work out okay. It's going to just be, they're going to end up winning most of these close games. I think I'm going to be back to waiting for the other shoe to drop just a little bit. And that's a bit of a bummer. That's kind of a new era. And we've been accustomed to, because Mahomes, with close games working out, with things that look like they're going to be bad, it always turns back around. You keep waiting for the bad game to end. And as we learned against the Bills, sometimes the bad game, it just doesn't end. And that's just a completely different thing than what we've been experiencing lately. Speaking of, what we've been experiencing lately, I'm just going to double check here to see whether or not it's actually working on the YouTube channel. I think it is. Why not? You all can see me, right? So I talking about that difference in feeling when you watch the Chiefs right now, when you are starting to get back to that experience of expecting bad things to happen. and especially when the defense is on the field. And we'll talk about the defense in a little bit. But even the offense, there's been a certain amount of bad things that have happened on offense. They either score or they turn the ball over. That's pretty much it. They rarely punt. And even on offense, we've seen a little bit less of the it's always going to be sunshine and rainbows type thing this year, even as they're averaging about, I think it's 3.2 points per drive right now, which is a borderline historic pace. But it's interesting how different it feels when you see turnovers and when you see things happening that you're just not accustomed to seeing, especially from Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's part of why you've kind of lost this aura of invincibility that we felt like the Chiefs had. Um, Chiefs guy just commented, Mahomes interception prone. This year so far, he's thrown multiple picks. It's worth noting that multiple of those picks have been when passes have bounced off of a receiver's hands. And those type of interceptions are exactly why I tend to chart accurate versus inaccurate throws, potential picks. Those are the things that matter a lot more than whether a pass was actually picked off in terms of trying to predict future performance or how a quarterback actually played. A ball bouncing off Tyreek Hill's hands and ending up into the hands of a defender, that's not a negative play by Mahomes. That's just something that happens. It's one of those things that you have to be able to look past in terms of measuring statistics. Mahomes has had abnormally bad luck with interceptions this year in terms of where the ball has bounced. And so that's just how it is. And that's just tough for him. And hopefully we'll see a bit of a turnaround there at a certain point. You'd think, the law of averages, eventually that'll swing. I see a lot of comments about the defense for the Chiefs. And I really don't know what to say other than it's bad. This is an interesting thought here. So Kenneth Spags was addressed about Sorensen today, just played it off, acted as if he had no plans to bench him or limit him. I saw those comments from Spagnuolo, and I thought that was interesting to see him admit forthright that, he had some bad plays. And then he immediately kind of tried to bring it around. A lot of guys had bad plays. You can't blame it on one guy. A couple things worth noting is that it's absolutely true that you can't pin the poor defensive performance so far on one player. You just can't. And I think by Spags saying that, it became easy for people to start going after him and acting as though he were somehow downplaying Sorensen's role in that. I don't think that's what he was doing, though. I think what you had there was a situation where he's trying to make a larger overarching point, that being it really has been everyone. I could point you to bad plays by L'Jarius Sneed. I could point to you bad plays by Anthony Hitchens, by Jaron Reed, by you know what? It would take a long time for me to name everyone on defense. Rashad Fenton's played pretty well overall. Tyrann Mathieu played pretty well overall when I've been watching. But for the most part, it's just been an issue where it's everybody. And I think he wanted to point that out. Like, if you remove Daniel Sorensen and you put a league average safety, which would be a massive upgrade on how he's played this year, make no mistake, but it wouldn't fix a lot of the other problems that we've seen in terms of coverage miscommunications, in terms of guys being generally out of position, some of the poor tackling, and some of that has been Sorensen. It's been a tough thing with regards to the entire defense. So I don't think Spagnuolo was intending on throwing blame away from Dan Sorensen for his bad play. I think what he was trying to do was basically say, look, everyone's playing bad. I'm curious what's going to happen this Sunday. This is by far the most blowback they've gotten in terms of Sorensen, in terms of basically any type of defensive player. This is by far the most negative publicity they've gotten in terms of one guy being out there and being the problem. I mean, on national television, Chris Collinsworth was sitting there going, wow, this guy's having a bad night. You can't have that sort of thing happen, right? You can't have everyone seeing a glaring problem. And I think Spagnuolo was trying to take the attention off that. I will be curious to see if they try to change things up just a little bit. But we'll see. It's right now, any kind of change would mean Sorensen being on the field less. And for me, I think that would benefit the defense in multiple ways. One being, I think that would mean Thornhill would be on the field more. It's worth noting Thornhill has been on the field for some of these bad snaps. He's just been playing in a different area. At that said, one thing that they could do differently with some of these dime looks is you could still pull Sorensen off the field if you have some of your cornerbacks back and you put a guy like Baker or Fenton on the field. I think that might be a good idea. But the real benefit to me of having Thornhill out there is you have a true free safety. You have someone you can play off the ball. And you really need that because right now Tyrann Mathieu's playing off the line of scrimmage far too much. He's playing out of the box far too much. He thrives in a robber role. He thrives closer to the line of scrimmage where he can get guys lined up, move around, kind of do some of the things, fake out quarterbacks, make them make wrong guesses as to where he'll be. And right now, that's not something that you're seeing from him. And it's worth noting, this is a really great comment here from Kyle Henning. Spagnuolo, he had no issue saying what he did about Juan, but yet Dan. And that is definitely something worth noting. You know, earlier in the season, there were comments made that Thornhill had to earn his way back onto the field, that they need to see some consistency, that sort of thing. It's worth noting that they didn't say just like flat out like they did with Sorensen. They basically said, yeah, he played bad. He had bad plays. And then he immediately tried to move on from it. But that's about as negative as you're going to hear this coaching staff get with regards to a player. You're just not going to see a ton of throwing players under the bus. It's just not something that Andy Reid does. And generally speaking, it's not what Spagnuolo does. That's why some of the comments about Juan Thornhill were so strange because it was so uncharacteristic of this coaching staff. My guess would be is that there's some sort of disciplinary thing going on with Juan Thornhill. If I were a betting man, that's what I would say is happening there. There's something going on in-house that makes them think that they are not, for one reason or another, they're not able to play him as much as the fan base is requiring or asking for. And frankly, I think the fan base is right. This isn't complicated sometimes. And at times, I think one of the frustrations for the fan base, the frustration for me right now, is it seems like something very simple, but yet when you see something very simple not being done, you try to justify it with complicated reasonings. And that's really the problem here is it seems simple. It seems like there's no reason why you wouldn't see Thornhill on the field. And so that's I can understand why people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm willing to see what happens Sunday. It wouldn't surprise me to see a little bit of a shakeup. What I don't expect to see, honestly, is for Dan Sorensen to get benched or something like that. I just don't see that happening. It just doesn't appear to be what they do, what their style is, or anything like that. So I want to talk about something a little more positive because I have the con today. I'm the man in control. After watching the disaster that was the first 5 minutes of this, Ryan will never do anything that stupid again, and I'm excited about that. So I want to talk about the offensive line, but I do want to. I'll hit on this question real quick first. Thank you for putting question marks in advance, by the way. That really is very helpful. It's interesting how professional and easy Ryan makes all this look. Usually all I have to do is make comments that make him feel uncomfortable, which is much easier. As far as Frank Clark's legal situation, I haven't heard anything. And those cases take time. My understanding is that the initial appearance got kicked out. I thought it was to November or something like that. It wouldn't surprise me one bit to see that hearing then get set out to like January or February or something like that, so they can try to deal with it after the season. That in criminal world, cases can remain open for a whole year, especially cases that involve a lot of plea bargaining and that kind of stuff. So it's not really surprising that case is still going on. I wouldn't expect to get a lot of answers until the case itself just gets completely resolved, and then you'll hear something about it. I'll take one more question, and then I have to talk about Creed Humphrey, guys. I have to. So what reasonable expectations can we have this year from Bradley Havens? How to fix for future years? I'm actually writing about that right now, where I'm trying to figure out what are some quick fixes that are apparently that are things that they could do. It's worth noting the Bills game was terrible. They looked unprepared. They looked significantly worse than the Bills. It was an awful game. But we haven't seen a game like that in a while. And so besides that, what do you have? You've got the 4 turnover Chargers loss. You've got a loss against the Ravens in which they should have won. They fumbled it away at the last minute. You wonder what people would think if Edwards-Helaire hadn't fumbled the ball and the Chiefs are 3-2 instead of 2-3 right now. Of course, there's always, the if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, et cetera, et cetera. But hitting the panic button right now, I think this is a semi-panic button time. This is a time for things look rough, but I think there's plenty of time for a course correction. If they lose to the Washington football team on Sunday, which is not a good team, that's going to kind of change the analysis for me because for a couple of reasons, 2-3, you're still relatively early enough in the schedule. You're still got time. You can get to 500 easy enough and reel off 4 or 5 wins in a row. Then, you're sitting in a pretty decent spot. If you sit at 6-3, something like that, that's not problematic. What does become very, very, very problematic is 4 losses this early in the season. You've basically created a situation where you have to reel off some kind of 8-9 game winning streak at some point in the season to really have a realistic chance at making the playoffs. That's something that they need to really think about. This is where this becomes an even more crucial game in some ways than the Bills game, which was one they really needed. Generally speaking, they'd be sitting in an entirely different place right now had they won that game. But in terms of trying to reasonable expectations, they want to be Super Bowl contenders. That should be the reasonable expectation for fans, even now. And being less than that, I'm not saying, anything less than winning the Super Bowl is a complete disappointment. It's hard to win the Super Bowl. There's a reason why you don't have a lot of long-term dynasties before the Patriots ruined it for everyone. So what you have, though, are reasonable expectations that they should look like a Super Bowl contender. They should be able to get to the playoffs, at least make a good showing in the playoffs, win a couple of games, maybe make it back to the AFC Championship. Those are reasonable expectations, and that's what the team expected during the times ours recording, and that my good friend and colleague Nate Taylor made a comment that the Chiefs players and coaches right now are kind of getting to have a bit of a come to Jesus moment with regards to maybe they're not as good as they thought they were or currently think they are. And that's one of those moments where you have to really look internally and have an honest moment with yourself where you say, we are not the team that we thought we were. And those are difficult conversations to have. And it requires finessing things and having that conversation leads you to a point where you can say, okay, we are not the team that we thought we were. What can we do to be still very, very good, still a Super Bowl contender? What adjustments do we have to make? And I have to interrupt that just to say Nate Taylor is awesome. And I will bring him on here when I figure out how to actually make the live stream work appropriately. I mean, let's be honest. This is not the level of professional quality that you have grown accustomed to with Ryan. And so once I learn how to do that, I'll have Nate on here. I'll drag him on. He's way too nice a guy to say no if I ask him nicely. It's one of the advantages of being friends with Nate. But he made a really good point of that this is a situation for them. They had to realize they are not as good as they thought they were. They really maybe felt like they were going to roll through. They thought Jaron Reed was going to be an impactful player. He hasn't been. They, I think, thought that Sorensen would continue to play at least decently. There were a lot of things that they thought would work this year that are not, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, where they are on course to be one of the worst defenses in history. Obviously, things haven't gone according to plan when that's where you're at. So what they really need to do is sit down and acknowledge where their weaknesses are and really have an honest discussion about that. All right. Thank you for the super chat, William Bradley. I appreciate super chats, guys. Normally because Ryan and I are kind of going so fast, I don't have an opportunity to say that. I just can't believe that you guys are willing to sit here, talk Chiefs with me, meet up here every Thursday. I can tell you, I have probably been working about 80 to 90 hours a week for about the last 6 months. And it's been really, really hard, honestly. It's been a very difficult time for a variety of reasons in terms of work. And one of the reasons I keep doing this is because you guys are awesome. Like, sincerely, you've welcomed me into the Rogue community, which is such like a different thing, and it's got like its own little world. And you guys have welcomed me and treated me as one of your own. You watch, you do super chats. I mean, you guys rule. So I just had to do that side note. All right, so you saw on Facebook, Juan and Dan shared snaps today. Madison said this is a thing similar to Andy. We talked to Knox, Tennessee. Any chance they split snaps in base defense Sunday? I don't know. Here's what I would say. I haven't necessarily heard anything crazy in terms of splitting snaps, who's going when. I think that's something they'd probably say for game day. If I were the Chiefs, I would not do something like splitting snaps. I would instead, I would just make the plunge, make Juan Thornhill the second safety, have him and Matthew out there together on the field. And I would actually try to go to three safety looks a little bit less because Sorensen is playing that badly right now. It's been a travesty. And so I think rather than just doing it halfway, I think you either don't do it, which is the wrong decision, by the way, or you go in all the way and you just completely make the change. And I think that's what the Chiefs ought to do in that situation. So I appreciate the super chat. Thank you. I see JC. I have some ghost peppers in my garden. What's your PO box so I can send you? I don't have a PO box. You're very, very generous. And I'll tell you what, if you ever want to send I can provide you my work address, which is 301 Court Avenue in Park Rapids, Minnesota. That sounds like a made up address. It's not. It's my work address. If you want to send a ghost pepper to that, you be my guest. And one day I will just half near die in front of you on this screen while Ryan and Josh at the very least look on in horrified fashion. All right. We've covered a lot of topics. You guys are asking so many great questions that I hesitate to move on to the things that I want to talk about. I've got my very professional post-it list here of things that I wanted to cover tonight, knowing that I wouldn't have the usual stuff with Ryan to just kind of sit there and chat. But you guys are being so great with questions that I'm just going to keep taking them, if that's all right with you guys. Kia Country asked, any thoughts on Josh Gordon getting more playing time this week? And he said they wanted to get more plays against the Bills. They were just losing by too much. Tyreek is also dealing with an injury. I very much agree that they should give him snaps, and that you would think Hill maybe dealing with an injury would have an impact on that. One thing, Hill has played through a lot of stuff in the past, so I would be kind of surprised if he missed the game. He's played through a lot of injuries, and he seems to be one of those guys. I mean, he'll gimp around before and after plays, and then he's running full speed faster than everyone else. The thing with Gordon, he didn't see a lot of snaps, but you saw just one early on a broken play. Everyone saw it, that he has that ability to work with Mahomes on broken plays, his ability to make contested catches. That's something they need. That's something they really need to incorporate in the offense. And you would assume every week they're going to get more and more comfortable with him there. With Andy Reid's comment that, they were losing by too much, what ends up happening then, your play calling is forced to go with stuff that stuff that you are ready with. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. I personally wish they would have kept him on the field a little bit more just to see if something would spark a little bit. And so that's that we'll see how things go with that. I hope to see him more on the field. I think every week you're going to see him more and more, especially if they're comfortable with where he's at physically. It's a long season, but they obviously need to get things in gear a little bit more. But at the same time, the bigger issue has been and will continue to be the defense. We're going to know a lot more if Washington puts up 35 on them. I mean, that's not out of the picture. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And I hate saying that, but it's just the truth. Aaron, shout out to you, Aaron, who you are consistently in the comments, sifting through things, talking to people, and you still have time to ask good questions like this. What's my Substack again? You can find it at a couple different places. It's MN Minnesota Cheese Fan .substack.com, or you can simply go to bit.ly/ Seth really hates money. And that's a true thing right there. That's so you can go to that. You can subscribe. But shout out to you, Aaron, because you rock. I can't imagine doing what you do every night. Just like I can't imagine doing what Ryan does every night. This stuff, doing this one-on-one, this is hard. I'm having flashbacks right now to the Chief of the North podcast, where it was just me talking for 45 minutes or so. And some of you maniacs actually listened to it. Actually, if you're someone who listened to that podcast, would you comment here? Maybe there's no overlap, but that was one of the craziest things to me, that people would just listen to me talk for 45 minutes. Not that I don't appreciate it. I do. So here's something that I want to cover, because I think it's important we continue to cover positive things and talking about positive things. Creed Humphrey. Just saying his name makes me smile. My new large adult son. It took me a while to find a permanent new large adult son after losing Mitch Morse to the Bills. I'm still a little bitter about all that, but happy for Morse. He got handed the bag. Genuinely awesome guy. You can tell what kind of guy, and I've said this before, that Mitch Morse is from the way the entire media reacted when he got paid. That's because he's just a genuinely nice guy. Just a genuinely good guy. So happy for him. That said, Creed, oh, you know what? This is a great comment for it. Creed is the best center, and you got to shout it out because it's in all caps. Creed is the best center in the NFL according to PFF. Look, I don't chart the snaps for every other center in the NFL, but here's what I know. I have been watching Creed closely, and he almost never makes mistakes. That doesn't mean he never loses. It happens. He had a rough snap where they end up giving up a sack against the Eagles, but he has been an absolute here, hang on. He has been an absolute stud for the Chiefs, and I'm going to talk about him more right after this. That's a goodbye drink. All right, those of you who listen to the Chief in the North podcast probably enjoyed that. The rest of you just understand that I'm a weird guy who does weird things. And so Creed has been exceptional. And watching his college tape, I was very excited with him coming in. He's so athletic. He's so smart. He is so fundamentally sound. He plays like a 5-year veteran. Man, a lot of you guys are saying really kind things about my work on Arrowhead Pride and the Chief North podcast. So thank you guys. You guys all rock. So Humphrey, he plays like a 5-year veteran. He does not play like a guy who is just entering in the league or just figuring things out. You see him, I mean, he rarely miss blitzes. He passes off stunts well. His hand placement is impeccable. There's no great way to beat him for defensive linemen. He just does everything correctly. Watch him sometime when you are watching games, if you're able to, unstress yourself enough to really just pay attention to the center. Watch his feet when he gets bull rushed, and watch how active they stay and how that base stays underneath him while he's fighting. It's an awesome thing to see. He's just been so good. And here's where that's interesting to me, because Trey Smith gets a lot of the attention, and Trey Smith has been very good. They really, it's kind of funny because Brett Veach is catching a lot of heat, some of it very deserved for some of the things that he's done. But from all appearances, he may have knocked this particular draft at least somewhat out of the park with regards to offensive linemen. We can talk about some of the other picks as much as I may not like to at a certain point. But with Creed, he's actually, in my opinion, despite Trey Smith gets a lot of attention because he pancakes guys, and it's fun. I mean, it is absolutely fun to watch Trey Smith just lay into a defender and knock them to the ground and then dive on top of them. That's fun to watch from an objective standpoint. However, between the two of them, I would say that Creed Humphrey has been, by a fairly decent margin, not like a huge one, but a fairly decent margin, the better, more consistent of the two players. And in a way, it's almost a shame. And again, Trey Smith deserves every accolade that he's gotten. He deserves every piece of praise that he's gotten. But in a way, it's a shame that his style of play has somewhat overlapped or kind of made people not really see what Creed is doing. Oh, while I talk, I'm gonna throw this one up just because I think this is a great comment. I will be disappointed. I won't be angry, but I will be disappointed. Um, the thing with Creed is he's much more consistent. Trey Smith has been playing excellent football. He has had some dominant snaps, but he's also had a few more losses per game, a few more snaps where you see a pass rusher get by him or where you see him maybe missing on a run block. He hasn't been quite as consistent, whereas Humphrey has been virtually flawless a lot of the time. And that is just that is something that's worth lauding, because he has been so impressive. He has been, to answer a question that I'm not going to put up because I've got another one, that he, from William, is he the best O-line on the team, even over Tooney? I think this year he has been. Tooney's been really, really good too. But I think Creed's been the best offensive lineman on the team. And that's on a team with guys that are playing really, really well. We already covered the Josh Gordon thing. I think he is going to perform. I think this is kind of a get-right week for the Chiefs, but where they don't get quite right enough to assuage all the concerns. And the problem is, even if the Chiefs win by, 2 or 3 touchdowns on Sunday, there's going to be a little bit of, well, yeah, it was the Redskins, or excuse me, the Washington football team. And that's just something that's, there's just not much to be done about that. So I think that's something that's really worth noting, that Creed has become an excellent center already, next to Trey Smith, who's been playing excellent football. Tooney's been playing really well, and you have all of those guys locked up for the next 4 years. That is an incredible boon for the Chiefs. Lucas Niang has had more struggles as a rookie, but he's actually overall not played bad football, in my opinion. I think Orlando Brown has been above average. He's still, I think, getting the lay of the land with the offense. Watching what Myles Garrett has been doing to everyone else, I think that would be one thing to think about with Brown. One of the things that I noticed with him as an offensive lineman was that he tended to perform pretty well against the highest level competition, as opposed to at times Eric Fisher would struggle against those guys. And I think we've already seen that a little bit with Brown in terms of facing the absolute best of the best. What you do see, though, is he occasionally does have those snaps where you just see that lateral quickness. That's a struggle for him at times. So it's going to be an interesting balance for them to try to figure out precisely how they want to use him over the course of the next year. And then I would assume future years, considering what they gave up to get him. All right, we've gone long enough. We got to talk about the elephant in the room, the defense. Look, there is nothing I can say about the defense that's going to make you feel better. And so I'm not going to try. I'm just going to give my opinion on what the issue is right after I answer this super chat here. Thank you for the super chat, Brendan Lake. Mahomes hasn't been as good under pressure this year. He doesn't look like he can avoid the rush, get out of the pocket, make magic as easily. Should be concerned. Is it the toe injury? I don't think it's the toe injury. He looks just as athletic. I think they're intentionally trying to keep Mahomes more in the pocket. They know that with Brown and Yang, they have guys that they're trying to kick guys wide, and then they have an actual pocket now because the interior offensive line is so much better than it's been in the past, and it's night and day in both run blocking and pass protection. They know that he can just step into the pocket, and it's just worth noting again. The Bills game was tough. Turnovers have been kind of tough, but the Chiefs are still one of the best scoring, most efficient offenses the league has seen in years. And that includes after the Bills game. Before that, they were on a literal historic pace, putting up points, moving the ball, and scoring. So I think I would wait a few more weeks before really drawing a lot of conclusions about Mahomes, the passing offense, because they've overall been really, really good this year. And as is usual in the NFL news cycle, where it's week by week, all it took was one game to get people really talking a lot about some struggles and that sort of thing. He's not bailing out wide from the pocket the same way he used to as often, just because that's generally speaking not what the game plan is right now. They're not trying, they trust the interior. They're trying to have him operate from the pocket or bail out through the B gaps, as opposed to what he used to do, which was bailing out all the way around. It's worth noting teams are trying to take that away from him now as well. One thing to let people know is that we are going to, and yes, I know I arrived late. I'm going to be ducking out a little bit early tonight. The reason being that my oldest son and some friends of his, they wrote and filmed and like directed it all together and all this stuff, a movie this summer. And so we were driving my son to and from places, to film it, and it's screening at the movie theater in my hometown here tonight. And so that's at 7. So I'm going to be ducking out here to get to it. Let's see. We've got the judge with a super chat. How am I feeling about Chris Jones at defensive end? I think that we may have underestimated just how much he helps draw attention from other guys when he's in the interior. And so I think they should really be cautious about using it a little more sporadically than they have been. One of the problems is that they were counting on Jaron Reed to be an impact pass rusher from the 3-tech or from the 5-tech, and he hasn't, right? And so you suddenly lose that production from the interior, something that they got used to. One thing that I did notice with Jones in the Eagles game, and there were a lot of people talking about the pass rush after the Eagles game. I'd urge people to go back and watch the tape from that game, because that ball was coming out in under 2 seconds or 2.5 seconds over and over and over. Jones should have had at least 4 or 5 quarterback hits against the Eagles and a couple of sacks, but the ball was out. And the big problem against the Eagles, you had blown coverage after blown coverage. You had quick sideline throws. These things were just wide open. The perimeter was just so exposed. Hurts had to make very few difficult throws in that game, or hold on to the pocket for very long at all, or hold on to the ball for very long at all. And so because of that, it's tough to really gauge Jones based on that game. And I've seen that in multiple other games where the coverage has been so bad, it's really tough to gauge the pass rush at times. I would say, though, I think you're seeing that perhaps doing it constantly, and maybe now that Clark is healthy, they'll go back to this. I think you should see more of a 50-50 type split and make it be a little more matchup independent or matchup dependent. You should really be looking at, okay, who is the strongest pass blocking lineman on this team, and where can we move him to? Where can we move him to match him up against a guy that he can take advantage of over and over and over? So I think they should be thinking more about that and less about just keeping Jones on the edge all the time, because it just hasn't paid off the dividends that I think they necessarily wanted to have it. So we've talked a little bit about Creed Humphrey. The defense, I'm going to go into that just a little bit here. The problem that I see, and I'm writing about this right now, it's a piece that I'm working on. I called it Cracks in the Foundation. The current defensive roster is problematic. There's a lot of people that want to talk about Steve Spagnuolo. I would say that there's a lot of evidence. If you look at some of the different things that Spagnuolo's tried to do, he seems to be trying to figure out something that works with the defense. I have a bit of a problem with the game plan against the Bills, and that they saw the things that were working against Josh Allen, the things that were bothering him, and it just they went away from it a little more than they should have. That said, I don't think Spags has generally done a terrible job. I disagree with some of the personnel choices he's made, but that's a different conversation. I think overall what you're seeing is an issue with the actual personnel. And the biggest issue, this is why this article I'm in the process of drafting is called Cracks in the Foundation. The biggest thing is that guys that are supposed to be foundational players are not necessarily playing like foundational players. And what is a foundational player? It's one of those things that's tough to define, but you know when you see it. But a guy like Chris Jones is a foundational player, a guy that is an absolute elite player at his position that a handful of times throughout a game will take over a play and will single-handedly do something that changes the that changes the way things work, right? That changes, a set of downs, forces a punt. An example would be against the Browns. When the Browns got the ball back, they had the lead. On first down, Jones got a sack immediately, put them in a bad down and distance situation. The Chiefs were able to get a stop. That was that's the kind of thing that a foundational player is supposed to make. The problem is that they have multiple guys that are supposed to be foundational players that they've either paid to be foundational players, or that through snap count, they at least appear like they should be foundational players, and they're not. And the easiest examples on the defense to look at right now is Anthony Hitchens, Frank Clark. Those are the two big ones right there. And it's easy to say, well, those are just two players. But those two players, based on their investment in them, those are supposed to be guys around which the defense can be based. And instead, Hitchens has been part of the problem. Clark at times has been part of the problem, and many, many other times not part of the solution. And there's a difference between those two things. But when you are a foundational guy, you cannot just be not part of the problem. You're supposed to be one of those guys elevating things. Frank Clark is supposed to be making 5 plays a game that help alter the game, while Chris Jones makes 5 plays a game that alter the course of the game. And then you've got 10 total plays. That's what playmakers are supposed to do. That's what foundational players are supposed to do. And right now they have 2 guys on defense that they invested in as foundational players that aren't playing like it. All right, we got a couple more super chats, and then I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to do the dad thing. You guys have been so patient. I cannot wait to see what this looks like on the front end once it's posted to the site, because I really think there's going to be like 5 minutes of me going, what's this thing? Oh no. And that's going to just make for some awesome live streaming stuff. So Ann Loader, I joined in late today. Your opening was great. Seth surreal. It's like being at the zoo in the twilight zone. A goal that I long had in terms of providing content. I always like to make people wonder what is going on. So that's good to know. I'm excited to watch it. I can honestly say I'm 36 years old. I have a family. I work in the legal field. I've been doing content stuff for a decade. I've appeared on a zillion things a zillion times. Today was the first time I've been nervous in years doing this, because I was sitting there, I have no idea what I'm doing. So you all have been wonderful, and I just really appreciate that you did not just completely roast me for my failures in terms of technology and that kind of thing. All right, we've got another super chat here. You guys better not keep me out of getting to that movie theater on time. Oh, just to say, you're doing an awesome job, Seth. You know what, Daryl? I appreciate that. I think you're doing an awesome job. This is some of the most fun that I've had in a while, and I always have fun doing this. This is one of my very favorite things, and so I'm gonna just do one more topic that I'm gonna cover for about 2 minutes here. And so here's what I'm gonna tell you guys. Something to keep in mind, and someone pointed this out to me. My topics. Someone pointed this out to me. One of the readers, actually, of the Chief of the North newsletter. They pointed out that every single year, the Chiefs have gone through a bit of a rough stretch. And that's actually been true since Mahomes as well. It's easy to forget. But remember, there was a stretch in 2018. Remember where they had lost to the Seahawks, they lost to the Chargers, I believe it was. They had a couple of rough games where they barely won, and things were the defense was showing the cracks in the foundation. 2019. I wrote an article about Andy Reid and Brett Veach and the concerns after they started a little bit slow. Then they lost a couple straight games. They kind of stumbled a little bit for a bit. Then they went on a complete tear. 2020 was weird in that they never really they didn't lose games. They had rough stretches where they didn't quite look like themselves, and that actually went on for a while. But it's worth noting they still had some of those moments. So, then before Mahomes, every year, just go back and look at the schedule. Every year, you will find a stretch there where things were horrible. I would just keep in mind that a team without Patrick Mahomes and without Jamal Charles went 1-5 to start the season and still made the playoffs. They have been in a much deeper hole under Andy Reid before, and I've got a lot of confidence that they can pull themselves out of it. Stevie Keys, you hear that challenge, Cooch? There's no challenges. I will not leave any super chats unanswered. I don't think I have. All right. I think we've done it. I think we've covered them all. You guys are so amazing for tuning in tonight. Thank you for being patient through my complete technological illiteracy. This was a lot of fun. If Ryan convinces me to do it again, we'll do it again sometime. It's going to be awesome. In the meantime, I never know how to. Hey, you know what, Scott? That defense was actually good though, but that offense kind of sucked. And so you can never have both. And that's something to just keep in mind. There's opportunities here for the Chiefs. They've been here before. They've got a chance to dig themselves out again. It's early in the season. Thank you guys for watching. And because it's me, I get to sign off the way I would want to. And I would just tell you, despite everything, man, wouldn't the last 3 years have been incredible for the Chiefs. And it is still a great week to be a Chiefs fan. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next